I read my queen's latest series, and here are my thoughts. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Now, similar to my Tessa Dare video where I did a guide to Tessa Dare, where I actually ended up binge reading all of Tessa Dare's novels and did it like kind of like a review for each and every single book that she has ever written, I'm doing one for Lisa Kleypas. Now, a lot of people don't actually know this, but Lisa Kleypas was my first historical romance author that I really actually truly to the bone of my core that I really loved. But I mean, like, of course, I first started off with reading Julia Quinn, and Julia Quinn was an author that got me into historical romances. But the more I read of historical romances, the more I realized that I really like Lisa Kleypas better. And I collected a lot of Lisa Kleypas's books, but I was hoarding them and I just never read them because I knew that her books were really good from the very few that I have read. And I didn't want to read them so soon because as soon as I read them, then I won't have anything from Lisa Kleypas to read. So I decided just to keep buying them, keep putting on my shelf, keep letting it collect dust until now I finally decided that I am actually going to force myself to read the Ravenals series. This is the latest series from Lisa Kleypas after she has taken a break, like a very short break from writing historical romances, and she kind of switched gears to writing contemporary romances. She wrote like a couple here, like Sweet Talking Stranger, Sugar Daddy, and I do have those books, but I just never read them. And to be honest, if you're a Lisa Kleypas fan, I feel like not really many people have actually read her contemporary novels. Before I start this video, I also want to say that I read a lot of Lisa Kleypas novels from the past that were written in like the 1990s and the early 2000s. So I'm very familiar with her writing and very familiar with her characterizations and her plot lines and things like that. There's like a certain feel to her books that you would get when you read them that are very kind of different from other historical romance authors. There's like that romance in it. There's this like intensity to it. Her like sex scenes are usually very hot and very sensual, and it's just like something unique and something different. And I always love a good Lisa Kleypas novel. So when I read her most recent novel series, I thought that it did have that specific feel, but there was just something wasn't clicking and it wasn't right. In this video, I'll actually be talking about each and every single book in this series, and this series starts off with Cold-Hearted Rake, then we have Marrying Winterborne, then we have Devil in Spring, then we have Hello Stranger, and then we have Devil's Daughter. Finally, our last book is Chasing Cassandra, which is actually a book that came out this year. So the first book in the series is Cold-Hearted Rake, and we're going to start off with talking about the step back of this series because the step backs in the series are gorgeous and beautiful. If you guys are new to historical romances, the page where it's like a pretty extra is called a step back. I actually didn't know this was called a step back until like I did my research on historical romances, and I followed a lot of historical romance Instagram accounts, and I realized that I didn't know what the proper name of this was. But basically this book is about Devon and Kathleen. Kathleen is a recent widow. Her husband has passed away after a drunken incident where he rode a horse drunk and he fell off the saddle and he got crushed and he died. And now the person that is going to take care of the estate and basically own the estate is Devon, and Devon doesn't realize what he walks into until he actually arrives and sees that the late Earl had 3 innocent younger sisters and also the young widow, which is Kathleen, and the estate is actually saddled with a lot of debt that Devon has to figure out how to manage and save, and also in the end protect the 3 sisters and also Kathleen, because he feels like that he has a sense of duty to at least take care of the woman that used to live in the estate. So he doesn't want to kick them out, but he also doesn't know what to do with them. So Devon is a cold-hearted rake. He's seen to be a big asshole in the book where he kind of just doesn't care about things, and he's like emotionless and he just does whatever he can. He has a brother named West who is the complete opposite of Devon, who is very charming and very sweet and very funny. And West is on the estate taking care of everything while Devon kind of just goes in and out of town trying to figure out how to solve like the financial problems without firing everyone and without like selling off all the land and like everything crazy like that. I thought that this book started off really good because I like the sexual tension between the 2 characters of Devon and Kathleen. They're obviously obviously very attracted to each other. Kathleen is put off by Devon's personality, and Kathleen herself has trust issues because the late Earl was a very abusive husband, and it wasn't a very good husband. Even though they were only married for 3 days, Kathleen kind of already saw that her husband was not understanding and would basically hurt her in a lot of ways. So she always thinks that, you know, when men doesn't get what they want, they will use force. So she's scared of that, and Devon is appalled by that, and Devon would never do that, and he is so sad that Kathleen had to go through that. And it's a story of like Devon kind of protecting Kathleen. But overall, this book was enjoyable, but I would like to say that 50% of this book is an introduction to the other characters in this series, and it was frustrating to see because you never really had much of a Kathleen and Devon storyline, and you kind of never had that build up, and it just felt like that their romance took a step back from everything, and that other characters had to be introduced so that you'll be interested into even reading the next book in the series. With that being said, there was also a second storyline in this series that I found to be very weird, because towards the end, like the last 20%, it was only focused on that couple, and I was like, what's going on? It focused on Helen and Winterborne, and I was like, why are we talking about them? This book hasn't even ended yet. Like, we should be still focusing on them. Because the storyline kept dragging away from the main couple, I just didn't care for this book, and I think I ended up giving this book like a generous 3 out of 5 stars. So the second book in the series is Marrying Winterborne, and the step back of this is very beautiful as well. As you can see, our main character is in a wedding dress because she has to marry Winterborne, and this book tells the story of Rhys and Helen. So Rhys is actually a character who got injured and who had to be taken care of by Helen, and Rhys and Helen were first introduced in Cold Hearted Rake, and this was actually the couple that I was talking about in my review for Cold Hearted Rake, where the last 20% seemed to focus a lot on Helen and Rhys so that they could set it up the second book so that you would be intrigued to read the second book in the series. And I was frustrated at that because while Rhys and Helen were very cute in this book, I didn't have enough time to even focus on Devon and Kathleen. So I just kind of wanted Helen and Rhys to get the heck out of in this first book. But the first book ended off really weirdly for Helen and Rhys, and I was very confused at what Kathleen was doing in the situation of Rhys and Helen's relationship, because Kathleen would butt in to Helen and Rhys's relationship and make it messier than it has to be. So this book tells a story of Rhys wanting to do whatever it takes to get Helen's hand in marriage, and that includes taking her virginity and ruining her for other men. And Helen is willing to do that and to give herself to him, but I just thought that this book was so weird in the very beginning after the catastrophe that Kathleen like contributed in the second half of the first book. This book started off with Helen begging Rhys to take her back because of what Kathleen said, and I was just like, so confused the entire way. I thought the setup was so weird. I didn't like how Helen was just like giving herself to him, and also I didn't like Helen as a character because what happened is that Helen was raised in a very gentle background where nobody told her about anything regarding the opposite sex or her body and sexuality. And I think a review on Goodreads really summed it up well, better than I would ever. It's bad enough that in romances you have to have a female character to be sexually awakened by a male character, but it's even worse when the male character has to teach you about your own body. So I understand the first part of her criticism where she said that it's bad enough that a female character has to be sexually awakened by a male character. I mean, back in the day, you're not really supposed to do a lot of the things that you do now sexually, and girls were never really taught much of a sex education, so I can understand why a girl kind of just like never really thought of like sex as a pleasurable act. But the second part of it, I thought it really rung true, and it really hit me to the core because Helen actually doesn't know a lot about her body, and she doesn't even know what to call her private place, and she was taught that her place was not good to talk about and not good to touch. It was her shameful place. And I thought that was extremely weird and gross to read. And that is definitely not a modern historical romance that I want to read that is published nowadays, because I expect more progressive characters in historical romances. I was very frustrated with them for the first half of this book, but towards the other half, it got really cute, and it got really like, you got to see more of the characters interact with each other, and you really start liking them more. So I ended up giving this one a 3 out of 5 stars. So the third book in the series is called Devil in Spring, and the thing about this series is that you have to know that you have to read these books in order. But if you choose not to read it out of order, you're going to be very confused, because these characters are always mentioned in other people's books, and you wouldn't understand like the backgrounds of other characters mentioned in the books if you don't read it in like the chronological order. What's even more tiresome is that this book, Devil in Spring, actually ties back to Lisa Kleypas's other series, which is called the Wallflower series, and Devil in Spring features the son of the main couple in Devil in Winter. And this book I really liked better than the first 2 books. So once again, the step back is gorgeous. And this book tells a story of a girl who's caught in a compromising position while trying to pick up an earring behind a desk, and her dress gets caught. And suddenly she is severely embarrassed when she realizes that she's not alone in the room, and someone's actually just kind of staring at her being caught on a desk. And people think that there is a scandal and that they were caught doing something that they weren't supposed to do. And now people are forcing her and him to get married. And it was super cute. I really liked the setup of the story. I thought that it was like a classic historical romance setup, and it was something very familiar to what I would feel towards older Lisa Kleypas novels. And I really liked the fluff and the romance. Our main male character, Gabriel, was very kind of like attached to her. He felt like he had a sense of responsibility to take care of our main female character, Pandora, because Pandora is now like kind of like dubbed as Ruin, and Pandora doesn't know what her future lies. Pandora and Gabriel are put in together in a nice situation where they're not going to be forced to get married as soon as possible, and they actually had a time to actually date and get to know each other. So it wasn't insta love, and it was just them being fun and flirty and being really hilarious with each other. I really like this book, but it wasn't like a very good original historical romance that shocked me or that made me like invested fully. So I ended up giving this one a 4 out of 5 stars. And I definitely recommend you to check out Devil in Winter if you haven't already, so that you can see the original romance in this one. So the next book in the series is Hello Stranger, and Hello Stranger Step Back is another gorgeous pink one. I really like this one better because like you get to see more of the characters' emotions, and the black dress is kind of like whatever, like I'm confused by that. So this story follows 2 characters named Garrett and Ethan, and Garrett is actually a female character, but she has like a manly name, but it benefits her because she's actually England's like first ever female doctor. If you're into romances with characters that are really advancing in their careers, that are really taking no nonsense from like the patriarchy and like basically just standing up for themselves, you'll definitely like Hello Stranger, because Garrett is definitely a character that knows her stuff and that will not let her sex stop her from saving lives and from being the best as she could in her profession. So Garrett is a doctor that has helped saved a lot of people in the past previous stories, because in the past previous stories, in the end, there's like a lot of traumatic happenings where people kept getting injured and people almost kept dying. And Garrett is like constantly working really late in the office. So when she walks home, she's constantly always in danger because a lot of like thugs and thieves are out there ready to rape and ready to kill people. And Ethan is kind of like our police officer who kind of like is always there to protect Garrett from any of the situations that might happen on her walk home. And this book, I would like to say, it follows kind of like a subgenre of romantic suspense, because Ethan is actually like a retired spy or something, and he's investigating cases, and there is like bombings happening in London, and he's always like getting shot and always getting hurt. There's a lot of action scenes, and there's a lot of Garrett like running around and helping and saving people. This story overall, I did not feel the romance between the characters. I did not feel like there was that strong of attraction. I didn't care about Garrett, to be honest. I thought she was just kind of like a bland character. Ethan was charming, but like without like a female support, I couldn't just buy in that Ethan was a good boyfriend or like a good suitor, so like I didn't really care. And to be very honest, I had to force myself to get through this book, and I couldn't even finish it. I had to DNF it because I was just so bored, because everything happening was nothing of interest to me. I did not care about this, so I ended up giving this one a 2 out of 5 stars, and I was very disappointed in myself because Lisa Kleypas is actually my queen. And now I'm starting to really doubt this series at this point. So the next book that we have is Devil's Daughter, and the step back is a gorgeous yellow with like a girl with really bright red hair. I would also like to point out that the Photoshop game on this book is really badly done, because this hair is obviously really fake and I don't like it, and it really hurts my eyes every time I see the book, because everything else is nice except for that like weird blowout piece of hair that we see. But regardless, this book tells the story of a girl who is actually already a mother. Her husband has passed away because her husband was born with a weak body, and he always had like a very complicated health issues, but nonetheless she loved him and she loved every moment that she spent with him, and obviously she loves her children that she had with him. So when she comes back into the same town that he grew up in, and she realizes that the handsome man that is talking to her children, that are talking to her and charming her, is actually her late husband's bully back in the day when they were going into boarding school, she suddenly has a very strong distaste for him. And this is kind of like an enemies to lovers romance, where like she doesn't like him at all, and he's kind of intrigued by her, and he always wants to try to impress her. And it's also him showing her how much he has changed ever since like boarding school happened. And seeing these two characters interact with each other was just so cute to watch, because like I really liked how she saw how good of a person he was and how sorry he was for all his stupid childish mistakes. The one thing I didn't really like in this book was that the main conflict was that he doesn't think that he deserves her, and I thought that that was kind of unoriginal, because I've seen that a lot in a lot of romances already. And considering that I hold Lisa Kleypas novels to a higher standard than other authors, I just thought that this one was a very cheap cop-out to a problem to have and to build tension. But I still enjoyed it, and I liked the angst that it did create. I thought that the drama towards the end was kind of like, once again, dramatic, and it wasn't anything to, you know, like it wasn't really that big of a deal, but like they try to amp it up that it was going to be a big deal, where this was going to make or break the relationship. Overall, I enjoyed it, so I still gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. It was definitely not a perfect romance. So the last book in the series is actually called Chasing Cassandra, and finally we have this step back cover, which I really like. I like this whole theme because it's kind of like Cinderella. So Cassandra is actually a twin to, I believe Pandora from Devil in Spring. And after like Pandora marries off to Gabriel, Cassandra is left by herself, and she doesn't want to be by herself. So she kind of ends up begging her cousin in the beginning chapters of the book to marry her, so that she can like at least have a companionship and that she won't be alone for the rest of her life. And then Tom kind of enters into the scene and sees this beautiful, stunning girl being rejected by a man, and Tom wants her for himself. So then Tom begs the cousin to let him have Cassandra as a wife, and that setup itself was very strange, to say the least. I don't know why, but in this series, I feel like that the setups of the characters are either very normal or strange to the point that it's hard to believe that something like that would actually happen, and also strange to the point that it actually becomes upsetting and something that you can't really like look away from the more you read the book. Like you have to keep remembering how they met, and you have to keep remembering like what happened. And this one was a very strange setup, but I did enjoy this book a lot because it had its lots of cute moments between the two characters. It was so fluffy, like in a lot of areas. So Cassandra is basically torn apart because she needs someone to love. Tom is infatuated with Cassandra, and Tom is willing to do anything to get to Cassandra, But Tom also has his stipulations where he basically has 5 emotions. So if you guys are into characters that are very stoic, that are very like hard and that don't really care about people, but like cares about the things that they really like, then you'll definitely like Tom, because I found that Tom has 5 emotions and he basically says that love is not a real thing and that love is fake, money is real, business is real, and I rather do business than to ever entertain myself into falling in love. But he's infatuated with Cassandra and he's scared because he's never felt this emotion before, because he has 5 emotions and he's like, this is not one of my emotions, and he's freaking out. But he knows that he needs to have Cassandra in his life, so he's willing to do a lot of things and get to know each other more so that Cassandra can build a trust. And along the way, Cassandra gets herself into a little bit of a trouble where people are spreading rumors about her and saying that she's not pure anymore and that she is being scandalized and she is losing her part in society. And Tom comes in and kind of saves the day and helps Cassandra, but Cassandra also has her stipulations, because if they were to get married, then she needs to have ownership of all her things. And I really like this book. I thought it was like really cute, like I said, and you can see Tom slowly melting his icy exterior, and basically Tom like changing himself and then telling people he's not changing, and then everybody's like pointing examples to him how he's growing into a softie, and then it's like, okay, maybe it's for the better though, so like I'll keep continuing to be soft. I thought this book was really good. But like I was talking to my friends on Instagram, we talked about how this was the last book in the series, or at least we think it is, but it's not really like a great finale to the book, because throughout the whole entire series we kind of see the interactions between other characters and other couples, but then we thought that we would have like a grand finale to this, but there was just never a grand finale. So we were kind of like left like, does this mean that we're going to have more books or what? Like, what's going on? So that is it for all the books that are in that series, and that is it for all my ratings and reviews for the books. Overall, I would have to say that the ratings are extremely high for the books, because we have a lot of readers that are either new to Lisa Kleypas, or we have a lot of returning readers that just enjoy Lisa Kleypas novels. But for me personally, I don't think that this is my favorite Lisa Kleypas series from them, given the fact that I probably only read one series from her, which is the Wallflower series. But just judging based off these individual books from her previous books that she's written and the books that I've read, I don't think that these are her best book. I don't think the characters are as good. I don't think the plot lines are as good. I don't think the conflict and the angst are that good. What I do like is like the writing, obviously, because the writing has definitely not changed. I like the sexual scenes because that has not changed. It's still really hot and still really good. But with those two things playing into it, the rest of the story just kind of falls apart and it just doesn't make me interested in the end. And you've seen already that I've gave up on some of these books, and I have to be also honest with you that a lot of these books I actually had to force myself to finish because I just was bored. Like, there was a lot of filler scenes, there was a lot of filler details that we didn't need to know, there was a lot of characters that were just kind of like always in the story, kind of just butting in. I get the fact that it is a series and they want you to be reminded that it's a series, and you're kind of like always anticipating for the next book by building a lot of conflict and tension towards the end of the books, but it also draws attention away from our main couples and our main characters. And I was just like left a little bit kind of like, can we stop doing like flashbacks to like the other couples? Can we just focus on our main couple for a bit? And overall, I was kind of left unsatisfied. I'm glad I read these 6 books and I got them off my TBR though. I have no regrets because I did spend my money on these books, so they had to be read anyways. But I am interested still in reading more Lisa Kleypas books. It's just that I hope that the books that I read in the future, at least her backlisted titles, are still very good and that they are reminiscent to the ones that I have read that brought me into the world of Lisa Kleypas and brought me into the world of her fandom. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and you guys got some insight on the Ravenals series from Lisa Kleypas and what to expect from her writing. And I hope this has given you some recommendations as well. But until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.